Death in anime is kind of amazing, and yeah, that sounds strange. Maybe even a little disturbing. But if we're being honest, it's true. No other medium handles loss quite like anime. It doesn't just show death, it makes you feel it. The sadness, the silence, the meaning behind every moment. These scenes aren't random heartbreaks. They're built with intent, with emotion, with a level of storytelling precision most Western media never quite reach. It's kind of funny when you think about it. Anime fans are built different. We don't just cry at movies, we cry over drawn faces and spiky-haired heroes. But there's a reason for that. The way anime handles death feels human, intimate, reflective, and painfully real in ways most other media never quite capture. And that's exactly what we're exploring today. Why anime deaths hit harder than anything else on screen, how writers, directors, and animators turn loss into emotion, and why those scenes stay with us years after the final episode. We'll take a look at the craft behind it, the psychology, the storytelling, the way sound, pacing, and emotion all work together to make something unforgettable. And we'll also talk about a big mistake many fans make when they try to explain why a death worked. Because by the end of this video, you'll understand something deeper. Anime deaths aren't just sad moments. They're storytelling milestones, emotional checkpoints that show why this medium keeps evolving while so much of Western storytelling stays predictable. So, before we go deeper, think back for a second. What was the first anime death that really stayed with you? Maybe it was Ace whispering, "Thank you for loving me." Maybe it was Maze Hughes and that impossible to forget funeral. Or maybe it was someone small, a side character you barely noticed until their absence hit like a brick. That's the secret. Anime doesn't just kill characters, it connects you to them and then breaks that connection with purpose. Every tear, every pause, every silent moment, it's designed to make you feel something real. Enjoy the show. So, why does it work so well? It all comes down to connection. Anime doesn't rush toward tragedy, it builds it. Long before anyone dies, it spends time making you care. Naruto sitting alone on that swing while the village looks away. Tanjiro carrying Nezuko through the snow, whispering for her to stay alive. Edward and Alphonse arguing, laughing, failing, and trying again. None of these moments are explosive. They're quiet, honest, human. That's the secret. You don't cry because a character dies. You cry because you knew them. You saw their dreams, their flaws, their hope. And when that disappears, it doesn't feel like a story ending. It feels personal, like losing someone real. Western storytelling often misses that. Someone dies, the hero screams their name, and the scene moves on. The emotion feels forced because the connection was never there. Anime doesn't take that shortcut. It earns the heartbreak through time, empathy, and detail. And it's not just the writing, it's everything working together. The art, the pacing, the sound. Think about Attack on Titan's thunderous chorus, those deep drums that make a single death feel like the fall of a kingdom. Or Your Lie in April, where music isn't just part of the story, it is the story. Every note feels like a heartbeat fading away. Then there are moments of silence. No soundtrack, no dialogue, just stillness. That silence is what hurts the most, because it gives you space to remember. Every smile, every promise, every bit of hope that came before. You're not just watching a death anymore, you're feeling it. And behind all of it lies meaning. Death in anime rarely happens without purpose. It's almost always about something bigger. Sacrifice, legacy, consequence. Jiraiya's death isn't about shock, it's about passing on belief. Lelouch doesn't die as punishment, he dies as choice, reshaping the world he leaves behind. Even in Attack on Titan, where death feels cruel and random, it still reflects the truth of war and the fragility of humanity. That's what makes anime different. Death isn't decoration, it's direction. It's how stories evolve, how worlds change, and how emotions grow. Because in anime, death isn't the end of the story, it's what gives the story its soul. Maybe the most powerful tool anime has is time. Anime doesn't rush through death. It slows down, lets you breathe it in. Where most Western stories cut to black after a single scream, anime lingers. It makes you sit in the silence. Those final words, the quick flashback, the hand reaching out one last time, they all exist to give you a moment to feel the weight of what's happening. Because anime understands something a lot of storytelling forgets. Grief needs space. You can't feel the depth of loss in 3 seconds. It needs to linger. It needs to hurt. And when anime does that, it taps into something deeply human. The psychology of hope. We feel the strongest when we think there's still a chance, when we still believe things might turn around. That's why Itachi whispering, "Forgive me, Sasuke," hits harder than any shock twist. For a moment, we think there's hope, and then it's gone. Anime builds that hope just to take it away, not to be cruel, but to be real, because life doesn't always give closure, and anime reflects that honesty. Even the smallest characters get exits that matter. In Demon Slayer, Rui's parents embracing him in the afterlife turns a villain's death into forgiveness. In Hunter x Hunter, we cried for an ant, an actual insect, because the story made us see its humanity. That's how deep this medium can go. When anime gets it right, a death scene isn't about violence or shock value. It's about what that moment means. But that's also where modern anime sometimes stumbles. There's this growing idea among fans and even some creators that death automatically makes a story better. You see the same comments over and over again. Kill more characters or the show's too soft. Plot armor ruins everything. Why didn't they kill the protagonist? But that mindset misses the point. Death isn't a badge of courage for a writer. It's a storytelling decision that only matters if it means something. If everyone dies all the time, nothing matters. There's no tension, no loss, no reason to care. But if no one dies ever, the world starts to feel hollow, like it's too scared to hurt you. That's the challenge for modern anime, finding that balance, to create deaths that matter, not because they surprise you, but because they change you. A good death doesn't just end a life, it transforms the story, the people who survive, and the viewer watching it. And maybe that's something we as fans should remember too. The goal isn't to see more people die, the goal is to feel something real when they do. Let's talk about that balance, because when anime gets it right, when it truly understands how to use death, the result is unforgettable. Take One Piece. In over 1,000 episodes, there's been only one major death that genuinely changed everything. Just one. Yet it still echoes across the entire series. That's not just luck. That's intentional storytelling. Oda knows how to build love and loss carefully. He makes you care first, laugh first, dream first, so when the world takes someone away, it hurts for years, not minutes. Now compare that to Akame ga Kill, death after death after death. At first, it's shocking, maybe even exciting, but after a while, it becomes predictable. The emotion fades because you start to expect it. When everything is tragic, nothing really feels tragic anymore. That's the difference between tragedy and repetition. Death only matters when it means something. And sometimes, meaning isn't just emotional, it's symbolic. Anime uses death to speak about bigger ideas. In Princess Mononoke, death is nature's revenge, a reminder of what happens when humans take too much. In Death Note, it's the cost of ambition, a warning about how easily power consumes. In Attack on Titan and Gundam, it's the tragedy of war, the human price of ideology and freedom. And in Grave of the Fireflies, death isn't just sad. It's hauntingly real. It forces you to look at what war does to innocence and family. Each of these moments shows that death isn't an ending, it's a message. But maybe the most underrated thing anime does with death is what comes after. Because anime doesn't just show loss, it shows grief. Western stories often move on too quickly. A funeral, a few tears, then a time skip. Anime stays there. It lets grief become part of the story. Naruto doesn't simply get over Jiraiya's death. It becomes the foundation of his growth. Eren doesn't forget his mother. Her death fuels his entire worldview, right or wrong. And a silent voice turns guilt into redemption, showing that pain doesn't vanish, it transforms. These stories don't say, move on. They say, carry it, learn from it. They treat grief not as a weakness, but as proof that something mattered. And that's why anime deaths linger so much longer than most. They don't mark an ending, they mark transformation. They change the story, they change the characters, and in quiet ways, they change us too. Thanks for watching, you weebs, and click the next video to see how good anime go bad. Trust me, it's worth it.